My brothers and sisters in Christ, we continue to unpack the story of creation in the first readings throughout this week from the book of Genesis. Today, the creation of Eve and the mystery of the interrelatedness of man and woman is on display. But I'd like to turn my attention, we'll have more to say as the week goes on with Genesis, but I want to turn my attention to our gospel passage today, where it's one of those that can be difficult to understand. And it is this mysterious episode of Jesus and a Syrophoenician woman. So first of all, a little bit of context. Not everyone, I dare say most people who read the scriptures may not be an expert of cultures and geography at this time. So Jesus now in the Gospel of Mark has moved north. And this is right after yesterday's completion of his dispute with the Pharisees about the purity laws, where he renders all foods clean and kind of gets them to stop harping on them as much. Now he moves north to Tyre, which is in modern-day Lebanon. This is quite a bit north of the Sea of Galilee, which is already what we would call northern Israel today. Now Tyre is a pagan city up in coastal Lebanon. So the Syrophoenician woman, this is a reference to the fact that she's Phoenician by descent, but of the part of modern-day Syria that's along the coast. That's what Syrophoenician means, Syrian Phoenician. And so she is a pagan woman, not of the house of Israel, that's in this place. And we're told that Jesus went north and didn't want it to be a public appearance. And yet word nonetheless gets out, so this woman comes appealing for him to heal her daughter. And where it can be difficult to interpret this is Jesus's response seems very startling, where we're used to the Jesus so quick to heal and so generous, and it seems like she caught him in a bad mood when he speaks very gruffly with her about, we don't throw the food, the bread, to dogs. What is this referring to? This is referring to the understanding that Jews and Gentiles had between each other. And they were separated, especially at table, because of the purity laws, not only of kosher food observance, but because of these various purity laws, Jews and Gentiles could not eat together. And as the children of the promise, as God's holy people, they were in a separate bucket. They were removed from the Gentiles. So Jesus seems to be invoking this kind of prejudiced dialogue between the two when he says that the bread is not meant for the dogs. You're a Gentile. You're a dog. The bread is not for you. And the woman is persistent. She says, yeah, but even the dogs get the scraps from the table. And then Jesus relents and the healing happens. So what is going on here? Why does Jesus speak this way? And what are our takeaways from the passage? First of all, this points to a reality of the ministry of Jesus, and that Jesus is the fulfillment of the covenant and the promises of the Old Testament. So God is visiting his people. He is the promised one coming. Therefore, what Jesus is making a point of saying is he has come to the Jewish people. Now, we know that the message of salvation, the gospel, is meant for all the nations, but the gospel is meant to be first presented to the Jewish people. And as we know, some will ultimately accept the gospel, some will not. And then in the story of the New Testament and the Acts of the Apostles, then the good news will be taken out to the Gentiles. But everywhere that, especially St. Paul goes, but anywhere into Gentile territory that the apostles go, they first present the gospel to the local Jewish population before turning their attention to the Gentiles. Because the gospel is first the fulfillment of this promise, and then it's taken to everyone else. So this is the reason of this. And another way is that Jesus is telling her, it's not your turn yet. I have not come yet to be a miracle worker for all these people in the world. I haven't completed my rounds in the house of Israel yet. So that's one thing to consider about the nature of the Redeemer and his earthly ministry. But the second is this: why then does he relent? And the answer, of course, is her incredible faith. Think of how many of us tend to pray, not with faith, but when we need something, we have a problem, well, I guess it couldn't hurt to pray. Maybe I'll ask God and maybe it'll work out for me. That's not necessarily coming from a real standpoint of faith. Faith would be the trust, I entrust this to God, it will happen. And in fact, this woman who's not of the house of Israel, she's a Gentile, and yet she shows the faith that is lacking in so many of the people that Jesus is bringing the gospel to. In fact, she invokes an image we find one other place in the Gospels. In the Gospel of Matthew, we get the story of the centurion who tells Jesus he doesn't have to bother to come all the way to his house to heal his servant, but only say the word and my servant shall be healed. These are the two times when Jesus performs a healing at distance, a remote healing, if you will, not in the proximity of the person who's healed. And it's no mistake that both people are Gentiles. These two people show incredible faith that God is desiring from the people of his covenant. And yet it is in these foreigners that he finds the response of faith. And so the woman not only shows great faith, but her persistence, her trust. She doesn't turn in anger when Jesus doesn't initially respond the way she expects and desires, but instead she is persistent in her prayer and her appeal, and her trust is fully in the fact that Jesus will do it. And when he says so, she leaves. She trusts in what he said and goes home and finds that he has done this miracle. And so, my brothers and sisters, may we be reminded to not just pray as if we were rubbing a magic lamp, but instead to truly put our trust in God, that he will work always for our ultimate good, and that his heart is always moved for our needs. May God bless you all.